driving an older, less expensive vehicle, especially something that's paid off and reliable. Financially, it's an absolute hack, but there's a few inconveniences with driving older vehicles. Day-to-day things that add friction and annoyance to the way you use the vehicle. These are some of my favorite solutions to some of older vehicles' most annoying problems. Upgrade those headlights. Oh my goodness, on older vehicles, the headlights are just garbage, especially anything that's halogen and reflector housing. They're just so bad compared to the technology that is available in modern cars and in the aftermarket. So ditch those headlights, and do not ditch those headlights by just swapping to LED bulbs in your reflector housing. Those suck, they scatter, they blind people. That's not even a modification, it's kind of a step backwards. The light scatter can be so bad and the light pattern can be so bad, you're not really getting higher performance. Luckily, I've got a few solutions for you on the headlight. The first is a mini projector bulb, which is completely different than an LED bulb that you just toss into the housing. Despite being the same size as most headlight bulbs, they're actually way better at throwing a predictable light pattern. The ones that I used for about 8 months were pretty good. They were from Colite. They're pretty plug and play, pretty good cutoff line, and slightly brighter, more intense light. They're about like 60 bucks for the H4 application, which is very cost effective and cheaper than even some of the just plug and play LED bulbs that are not good. They're not a true plug and play though, because you do have to remove the little reflector cap in the housing in order for the projector to project straight through. Since it's not actually using the reflector housing, you need to get rid of that. It's a miniature projector and it's actually projecting light straight from the LED through a lens to make that cutoff line. I only had one issue with them. My fog light circuitry is modified. Since I have a front bumper, I don't have fog lights anymore. I removed those to put on my steel bumper. So when I press the fog switch, the high beams come on the mini projectors. I don't know what would happen if I had normal fog lights still plugged in, if there would be enough load resistance on the circuit to have that not happen. But that was my only issue with them. Everything else seemed pretty good. And for the price, it's hard to beat the performance that you get. But by far my favorite way to upgrade the headlights on a vehicle is projector retrofits. Compared to halogen and reflector housing technology, projector retrofits might as well be from a different planet. That's why you've seen projectors go from a niche or a luxury vehicle application to standard on almost every single vehicle. They're not just for BMWs anymore. You're seeing them on the lowest base model offerings from companies like Toyota, because projectors truly are the way to go. You can get into a nice set of xenon projectors for between $200 and $400. I recommend going with new housings to do the install and really make the most out of those projector retrofits. The install and the wiring can be a little daunting if you don't have any previous DIY experience. If you've never wired something up to your vehicle, or you've never had to do any kind of installs or mechanical work, it's a little daunting. But with a little help from the internet and some YouTube videos, like the one I just made, you can totally figure out how to install these on your own. Or if you're lucky, you might come across some pre-manufactured projector retrofits that come in a completely encased headlight housing that you can just install the housing on your vehicle, and all you have to worry about is some of the wiring. Hand-assembled projector retrofits from smaller companies are almost always going to be more than DIY kits. If you have the cash, they can be a really good way to go. You can get LED, HID, also known as xenon, and halogen projectors. It depends on what's already on your vehicle and how you're going about upgrading them. But for most projector retrofits, you're looking at installing bi-xenon or bi-LED. And the bi just means that you have a high beam and a low beam. So you have a new high beam and a new low beam with really nice cutoff lines and way better light throw. You're gonna use your headlights every single time you drive at night. And the halogen ones just aren't gonna cut it, especially again on these longer trips that I tend to take, or these longer stretches in the dark. You get sick of just looking at a really crappy halogen pattern, especially when you know there might be wildlife on the road. Halogen headlights for me have never cut it and have never felt safe, especially compared to what a projector retrofit can provide. You just can't see far enough down the road going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. Note that if you do swap from some kind of halogen housing to an LED or a xenon setup, if that projector isn't close enough to the lens on your headlight housing, it might not produce enough heat to melt snow or ice as well as the halogen did. Halogens produce light straight out the front, but especially LEDs send light out the back of the assembly. So unless you can get them kind of the right distance, melting snow and ice might not be the same as before, so that is one caveat with projectors. If at this point in the video you're finding this information helpful, please give this video a thumbs up to let me know. Thank you. If you're like me, you're probably using your head units and speakers in your car almost every single time you drive. Between listening to music, podcasts, having directions play through your speakers, or charging your phone, you are probably using your stereo system every single time you hop in the car. And especially on longer trips, Having a decent stereo setup and a decent way to charge your phone can really make or break your experience with the vehicle. The ability to charge my phone and play music at the same time is really convenient. Now, I didn't grow up with things like CarPlay being available in cars, and I'm not used to that. But other people are pretty used to it, and when they move into these older vehicles, that's the experience you want. You can get radios that do that, the whole touchscreen, the CarPlay thing. It's very intuitive and very nice. I'm completely happy with a typical aftermarket deck that has several buttons and a couple different ports. I went with a simple Kenwood deck that I can plug my phone into. The same port will both charge my phone and allow me to play media. And I also opted for a magnetic mount right above that stereo. So right in this little space on my dash, I can contain my phone if I'm using directions, so it's hands-free, but I can see the directions, and I can play music all in the same little space on my dashboard. It works great, and it's really useful on longer trips. On-road use, I have never had any problems with the phone falling off the magnetic mount, and even on kind of off-road, dirt trails, Forest Service roads, you really have to whack a bump in order for the phone to actually fall off the magnetic mount. It takes no time at all to connect and start getting music playing. There's no friction to the setup, which is exactly the way I want it, and now I use it all the time because it's so easy to use. When you look into doing a stereo, you may also want to do door speakers. Especially if you're opting for an aftermarket stereo that's going to draw a little bit more power, you can match it with some aftermarket door speakers and end up with a pretty nice sounding stereo system. Crutchfield has a really good article on matching door speakers to stereo and get a really nice sounding stereo system. I completely recommend Crutchfield for ordering parts. They give step-by-step instructions and they'll tell you what fits your vehicle. I've always had good experiences using them to upgrade my car audio. All you really need is some kind of cheaper deck from a reputable brand. I look for a few things. The most important thing to me is always that volume is a knob. You'd be surprised that even in the aftermarket stereo space, there's still people who make you press an up or a down button, or it's a very tiny, or it's an out of the way to control the volume. So I like having that big button right in the center that's easy to maneuver to and control. And on this particular stereo, I went with something that was very plain. I wanted to kind of match the OEM interior, and I turned the color to this white silver, and it blends into the interior about as well as an aftermarket stereo can. Very cheap to upgrade, very easy to DIY, and it's a modification that you will use every single time you hop in the car. Now, for my third one, I'm not gonna lay another must-have on you guys. Add some personal touches to your vehicle. In my vehicle, there's a lot of different personal touches between aesthetic mods and more functional mods that might not be for everyone, but are great for me. I upgraded tires, I upgraded suspension on all four corners. Those are things that you also use every time you're in the vehicle. Think through it thoroughly, think what kind of suspension you're gonna need. You don't have to spend a lot of money to make up a little ground in that category. Another great addition for me has been the camper shell, which, if you can tell, is now paint matched. I finally went to Mako and sucked it up and paid for a paint match. It was more than I wanted to pay, but we don't have a ghetto pickup anymore. Like, look, a normal truck. Also, like, a really good, like, perfect paint match. It's like really, really close in color. No ghetto truck, that's a personal touch. There's no utility really to having a paint match camper. Anyhow, personal touches. Like my sleeping setup in the back of the truck, the tool storage, access all my recovery gear, sleep, set up camp, doing it all out of the truck, knowing anywhere, set up shop, set up tools. Like, these personal touches can add a lot of value to the vehicle. It is one thing to drive an older vehicle. It's another thing to drive an older vehicle that's been taken care of, that's been tastefully upgraded, and has some character and utility to it. Like seeing an old vehicle that you can tell someone's taken the time to not only maintain and keep in good condition, but also you can tell like they've modded it, they've made it fit some kind of purpose or vision that they have, just the way I've done with my Tundra, you know, just a winch bumper, some light suspension, some tires, and a camper shell. Like, it has been tastefully, slowly, methodically modded to fit my taste and my use cases. I get a lot of joy out of that. I'm sure you guys get a lot of joy out of that too. That's one of the most like respectable ways to use and build a vehicle, is just to think it through, to build it up, and mod it how you want to mod it. You can go crazy on aesthetic stuff. I've tried not to do that. And all these modifications I've talked about are just ways that I try to turn up that dial, try to make this vehicle just a little bit more fun to drive. Those are my thoughts, those are my modifications. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see more about modifying your vehicle, check out some of these videos. Otherwise, I will catch you in the next video. Thanks so much.